We often use the word torture to describe minor modern annoyances, a buffering video, a long line at the DMV, or a stubbed toe. We often assume historical executions were designed to be as efficient as possible, like the rapid, heavy drop of the guillotine's blade. But an entire era of industrial cruelty functioned on a different logic. Punishers engineered ways to stall the moment of death, forcing the human body to endure at its absolute physiological limit for as long as possible. The Iron Maiden is often viewed as a simple metal coffin, but its design was a calculated exercise in puncture placement. The internal spikes are intentionally short and specifically positioned. When the door is closed, they pierce the flesh, but are spaced to miss the heart, lungs, and eyes. Because no vital organs are destroyed, the victim survives the initial closing of the door. They remain trapped inside, enduring shallow puncture wounds that lead to a slow, continuous loss of blood. The Iron Maiden is built for a slow, systemic shutdown. It forces a victim to wait for their body to give out, rather than providing the mercy of an instant death. While some devices relied on piercing the body, the rack used the mechanics of tension to dismantle the skeletal system. By utilizing a system of ropes and rollers, executioners could generate unyielding mechanical force. This allowed them to pull the victim's wrists and ankles in opposite directions with overwhelming tension. Under this constant pull, the body fails in a predictable order. First, the joints are pulled from their sockets, then the long bones snap, and finally, the muscle tissue begins to tear. This mechanical dismantling turned the interrogation into a race. The physical limit of the victim's joints served as a countdown, pressuring them to confess before the body was permanently destroyed. Beyond iron and rope, executioners in Asia found ways to harness the growth of the natural world to achieve the same slow results. They focused on bamboo, which is the fastest-growing plant on Earth. Certain species are capable of growing up to 3 feet in a single 24-hour period. A victim was bound tightly directly over a sharp, young bamboo sprout. As the plant naturally expanded upward, it would slowly and inevitably grow its way entirely through the human body. Once the process began, it was a passive execution. It turned the simple biological drive of a plant into a slow-motion murder that required no further effort from the executioner. The breaking wheel combined blunt force trauma with prolonged public spectacle. The executioner used a heavy hammer or iron bar to systematically shatter the bones in the victim's limbs. This continued until the arms and legs were flexible enough to be manipulated like rubber. The strikes were carefully delivered to avoid the head and chest. This ensured the victim would remain conscious and alive through the entire pulverization process. The victim's limp body was then woven through the spokes of the wheel and hoisted onto a tall pole. Death usually came days later, the result of dehydration or the local scavengers. The wheel turned the body's own resilience into a burden. It forced the victim to remain alive long enough for the environment to finish what the hammer started. These devices show that across history, human effort was often directed at harnessing simple physical forces and natural growth to maximize suffering. Today, these mechanisms are confined to museum exhibits. They serve as a grim baseline for measuring how our definitions of justice and empathy have shifted over the centuries. It provides a sharp contrast to our modern lives. The endurance required by victims of the rack or the wheel is incomparable to the trivial irritations of today. As we look back at these engineering choices, we can be grateful that the only shutdown we face in our daily lives is a dead battery or a frozen screen.